I'm Shelly Ortiz. I work with the Office of Global Engagement. I'm actually the director of our International Students and Scholar Services. But one of my particular roles on campus is the Fulbright Scholar Liaison and the Fulbright Program Advisor for the U.S. Student Program. So the Fulbright Program was actually established right after the end of World War II. And part of the purpose was that Senator Fulbright believed that if there is exchange and interaction between individuals, that would actually be a way of promoting public diplomacy and getting mutually understandable outcomes. And so that's the purpose of the program. And so what the opportunities are for students is that there's specific grants, whether they're geared to study or research. Primarily, you have in the research, you do a research proposal, and you're trying to justify why it needs to be done in that country and how it's mutually beneficial both to the United States and to that country. Or else you can actually do an English teaching assistant grant where you actually go in, and it is that you are assisting an English teacher in the host country. In that case, you are actually only part-time, so you need to also develop some kind of proposal of how you're going to do community engagement that will help to advance the program goals of that mutual understanding and cultural understanding between the two different countries. To be eligible for a Fulbright U.S. student program, you have to be a U.S. citizen. Then also you actually have to have your degree in hand by the time you go out on the grant. So ideally, you would apply maybe looking at your junior year, because it does take a year plus cycle to go through the application process and the selection process. Also, we've had a lot of master's and doctoral students who are going out and doing research as part of their thesis or dissertation. Okay, so in order to apply, we go through a process at Utah State University where the first week after Labor Day is when we have you submit all of your applications into the portal. And at that point, we pull them out, and the Utah State University, Fulbright Program Advising Committee actually reviews, and they conduct one-on-one interviews where they try and glean out a little bit more of what the student is trying to achieve, and then they provide feedback and ways to improve the application. Usually the application is not, final submission is due until the first week of October. So there's about a 1 month time frame for students to be able to submit. Once it's submitted, then it goes to the National Screening Committee. The National Screening Committee is made up of faculty members from across the country who get together, and usually in November or December, they're reviewing and saying, do we recommend that this go on to the host country, or do we think this is not necessarily one of the higher qualified ones? Once they send it on to the host country, if they've chosen, then you're considered to be a semi-finalist. It's in the host country that there is some selection committee, which we really don't have a lot of information on because it is so individualized based on the host country and how they choose to review, what their priorities are, that they review it. And then sometime in March or April, they start notifications saying whether you are selected as a finalist or if they choose not to accept your grant proposal. And then after all of that, usually you go out the following August through March, depending on if you're going to the northern or southern hemisphere. So absolutely, some of the ways we do have already established institutional partnerships, which we can use and leverage to help your applications. Those can be meaningful, but what's even more meaningful is if you have a faculty member who already has a relationship with a faculty member at another institution in the country that you're interested in, leverage those, because then you've got the personal introduction, as well as most likely they're talking about similar interests, so you know they have the resources to accomplish what it is that you're trying to accomplish. So to get the ball rolling, you're welcome to contact me directly. I can give you some technical information, as well as I know people across campus who've been involved in Fulbright activities. particularly, we have a few faculty members who've actually sat down on that national screening committee, so they can give you some insights as to what happens at that level. Um, Also, I would really encourage you to work with faculty members who have been involved in Fulbright to find out how to create a good application. You have to have a personal statement and a grant or purpose statement. And so how to make that meaningful. If you are doing a study proposal, you are really going to want to build your relationship at the host country, because most oftentimes you run a letter of affiliation saying that someone is willing to host you and how they're going to work with you to help you achieve the goals that you are proposing to do. In the English Teaching Assistant Program, they place you. So you are a little bit at their whim, so be careful when you're developing your proposal or your purpose statement that it's not tied to a specific region and has to be done in a very specific location. So language varies from country to country. So you have to look at the individual grant award and see the description and what they require. Some places it's a novice level, sometimes they don't require it at all. Other places it needs to be more advanced. You do whatever you do propose, you have to show that if there is a foreign language involved, that you have enough skill to be able to accomplish what it is that you're proposing to do. Now, in the ones that do require that you have a language proficiency level, oftentimes you provide a self-evaluation, but then you have someone provide another evaluation. The best way that we found is you usually go to one of the language faculty members here on campus and they can do that assessment for you. So actually, the Fulbright program has been very clear that they are not looking for a cookie cutter look. In fact, that's why they leave such a broad interpretation, because they want unique proposals, and they're not basing it so much on your GPA. Rather, they're saying, how unique is this proposal and how likely are you to succeed and obtain the objectives that you are proposing? And then that's when the screening committee then looks at it and says, how does this fit in with our strategies as the host country? So there's a lot of different factors that go into it, and it's more than just academics. So as far as dependence, when you actually look in the grant award description, it does address dependence, whether it says that what kind of funding is available to support dependence, or they'll tell you that it's not available at all. For the most part, for the English teaching assistants, that usually is not offered. The rest of it varies, again, country by country, depending on what that country also puts into to support the grant. The value of doing this process, it's almost like a self evaluation and knowing what it is that you are, what are you capable of, what are your strengths, and how likely you are to achieve what you are to do. The reality also is that most Fulbright grantees do not get it the first time that they apply. It's almost like a process where you go through multiple phases and multiple applications in order to be able to obtain the Fulbright proposal. So also, I would say if you do apply and you're not selected the first time around, if you feel you have something strong and meaningful, then continue forward, because that is something that is of value. One of my favorite stories, we had an English teaching assistant grantee who he explained he chose to apply to do an English teaching assistant in the Slavic Republic. And his experience had been he had lived in the UK and there was a population there who were from the Slavic Republic. And he talks about how he was engaging with them and he just developed a love for them. But in the meantime, as he was working with this population, he also talks in it was his purpose statement and his personal statement, one of those two. And he talked about how he was actually mistreated when he was walking through, and he was that neighborhood, he was having rocks thrown at him. And he talked about that understanding of how they accept foreigners and such, and their response to that. And that, I think, was key in getting his grant accepted, because he expressed this cultural awareness that was way beyond just saying, I like these people and I want to serve them. Six, there's also one that addressing language I didn't think to address, and that's the Critical Language Award. And so in some places, the US government is deeming certain languages as being critical to advance diplomacy. One that comes to my mind is Bahasa Indonesian is one of those. And part of the award, you can actually apply for a critical language grant, which allows you to study the language before you initiate the full grant, and that can be up to a 6-month period. So if that's something you're interested in, those critical languages, look into that as well.